The agenda included the program, which means the new level. We are not going to talk about the new level. All the companies are equally good. But what I want to mention that there are different worlds, different information spaces. I used to work in the in-text company, I used to work in prose company, and I noticed that there is some definite information bulb when the companies working in the sphere of translation, considering that we are selling the translations only. And when I came to the Lokalise, I saw that there are new speeds, new ways of life, new things. That is about what I want to share, not about the new level, the old level, that there are totally different worlds, and maybe it will be interesting for you to figure out the way Lokalise works. The first matter, when I started working, I understood that people were ordering from Gango. How it looks? The company downloads some files or some content and blindly sends it to the company whom they had never communicated with. They are sending the order with such rates, which you see on the screen. This is something which was taken a week ago. They are sending it blindly without providing any communications, expecting for the answer whether it's okay or not. And I remember when I used to work in text, there were different quality assessment procedures. They do still exist. They still exist. I remember that everybody was worried about, very much concerned. And in this case, which I have just provided, we see that you just send the files and expect to have the answer yes or not. And I was shocked because that is the company which are not some random companies. That is the companies which, for example, want to make something in a day, but those are really reliable companies, much talking about localization, much heard about, and they are making orders this way. I didn't understand what it was about, actually. After I had read in Genda, I found a piece that they noticed that they do not translate blindly, but they have some very secret, very smart system who selects from the huge number of translators, interpreters, and they choose the most relevant translators for themselves. And after that, I look at this and think, oh my God, what is it? 12 cents. Are you sure? Is it real? There may be people who would go for it, and the client might enter the system and mark those interpreters who would agree for that. It's a totally different world, something which is ununderstandable for me. After that, I started to consider what the localization managers were talking. For example, from the HubSpot, we have the following. Is it readable for you? And for example, we are HubSpot, and there is touchless localization, so-called, which means we don't care. We do everything with the help of automation, heavy automation. So we do not, which means we do not care. That is quite understandable because that's, I don't know whether it's cheap or not, 12 cents a dollar. Is it combinable or not? Is it possible to make it more expensive from Russian to English? You do not need to work hard, but just require 12 pounds a word. I could never sell my work 6 cents a word, but now people find it so easy. The company searching for the interpreters in prose, they were not touchless, they were calling themselves low touch, which means they were not totally indifferent, but indifferent anyway to many things. We were much cared about the quality. We were introducing different things, and the things we can rely on, that was the other content types, тобто інші типи контенту, the other types of content which we wouldn't deal with, we didn't know how to deal with. It turns out to be that there is another world which is available for the internal employees. One of the previous UTIC reporter was mentioning that when they were producing something good, they were eating themselves the best things and sending out things they didn't want. That when they were making some biscuits or cookies, it means that not everything was available. They didn't sell good things, that's why they didn't get good money. There is also a Spotify, a very interesting company which tried to expand to different international markets globally, and they are mentioning that LSP, due to different problems, different hypotheses, the general impression is that LSP cannot provide the expected quality. For example, other companies order from Gango. Okay, there is something wrong about it. And it is interesting to know that Spotify, for example, they decided to call it the combined model, when part of things are done by the company, part or at the outsource, and then it is combined in one work. But it is interesting that except from the linguistic companies, some companies are trying to expand and work on a larger scale. It is important to mention that the moving point which increases the scale of the company, that is not the quality standard. It is expected that the quality would be neglected, which is very unpleasant to realize. It is very difficult to realize that you're going to encourage the scaling of the company, but not the quality increase. But I hope there is a hope, because he mentioned there are the scale increase economies, and also specialized services. What they mean by specialized services is that you can take more per word, more cents per word, and you can produce very interesting things that the company can rely on while growing, while expanding, while increasing their capacities, but not just doing something randomly. This is the basis for them to do that. And maybe you can see what you have.
Okay, so those specific services, they can be divided into some groups. First of all, we can focus on our customers, not only LSPs, because you know that they represent as a small group, and we can also sell the products not only to them. Then Valentina Kozlova conducted some research in Lokalise, and the results showed that those clients which have software development as based on their requirements in terms of translation services needed and some specifications, quality, speed, flexibility, approaches, they apply different approaches, and very often LSPs, when they receive a certain volume, when the end consumers have very high requirements to what they are engaged in. It can be about speed, it can be about quality, it's also about the scope, and there is a certain part of contact which goes to LSPs. But the rest of the parts of the rest of the companies, they try to manage on their own. Well, marketplace, this is what we could see with Gango. You just have this random sending, and you know what it leads to at the end of the day. And it's also very interesting with custom MT. When there is communication with our sales people, the strategy is to use machine translation whenever it is possible. We have 8 pages of text translated, but not everyone can really count that. But with some companies, they have big volumes. And the only way for them to manage the scope of translations is to use MT. So I think that LSPs, one of the services that they can provide is training, is providing education to those people who work for end consumers in terms of the use of MTs, when one can use it, when it better is steer clear of it, and about the cost involved, because we can talk about thousands of dollars, especially when we talk about this custom FT. Well, if my understanding is correct, of course. Well, I don't really know about hundreds, never heard about that. Usually people say, well, we have $20, let's do something. But yeah, no, hundreds. I think that we don't really have such high expectations as yet, or maybe I'm not aware of that. And then if we take a look at some other adjacent areas, it's very important that we have something additional. When we have this set of requirements to the quality, well, there was this one case that I wanted to share with Riedel company from Odessa. They have a product and they do not have big scale production. I mean, RWC Moravia probably will not be interested in them. So to enter the Chinese market, they have one reliable translator, and all the marketing is based on their translator, on that one translator. And what about the relation? There is this person who knows someone, who knows somebody else, and he's the friend and the brother of someone, and his conclusion is that localization into Chinese is perfect. And since then, that translator is in charge of all the marketing and translation into Chinese, because he's been approved. He's a good one. But probably you can also sell this one as a company to be a representative in the market and to assist not only with translation services, but also to help with applications and generally doing promotion of products. When we talk about different clients, they have several types of workflows. In Lokalise, we work with soft developers, and the emphasis is placed on those people who work in programming, but not only, but Spotify and Riddle. In Ukraine, that they develop some software, some apps for Ukraine. As I can see it in PROS, what they published, everything was already completed. They already identified the problem. They designed the solution. They developed the feature. The developers. They already have all the promotion material through different channels. And then on PROS, they post this announcement. 2,000 words translated. Who can translate it? And there is a mix of so many things, starting with interface to updates. And this is just one huge unit which was given to the translator. And at that point, when a translator notices something about any corrections in software, nothing will ever happen. At that point, there's absolutely nothing that one can do. There is no value. That is why the task of the translator or the company is not to interfere. You quietly take this assignment, you translate, you give it back, because if they were late with that one, that would take too much time. This one was not clear, and the final idea is to basically to make it public. What I also noticed in Lokalise, what is a typical offer? So there is this shift. There was this presentation before that on working with developers. So they start engaging translators at an earlier stage when they are still working on coding. So with Lokalise, what we offer is engagement of translators on the stage of feature development. As soon as we have the first units, textual contact, we start working with translators who will translate, who will also provide some feedback, some comments, and probably at that stage their comment can be taken into account. How it works, how does it work in practice? If there is a code and in Lokalise we'll already see the textual representation of that, and you can ask something, you can hope that someone will listen to your comment about the fact that this button is not very user-friendly, or maybe you do something about that because it's not very convenient to use. And if you change it, if you improve it, it will also impact your sales, and at the end of the day, it will lead to international growth. Maybe there is still a chance of doing so. It is possible really to sell these solutions at earlier stages, and you can also sell those solutions when designers are working. Well, it is called design-led localization. So we know about the problem. Spotify, we add a certain feature, playlist feature. Let's take this one. And when the developers are working on design, you can also start working on translation. And you can add that in German, you know, all those names, words, they will not fit, and the designer can also adjust this translation, and it will work for you as a translator, and it will work for the German market or for the Vietnamese market. The quality of interface and translation and how everything will work out in the international market will be much higher. So we do not really have those 2 weeks, just 2 weeks, to work on all of that. It means that we have plenty of time. We can take this very slow-paced approach working on the feature. And when we finally have the feature, it means that we are almost ready. We are on the context. We are aware of all the subtleties. We know how to act. I don't really sell in Lokalise, but it seems to me that this part is easy to sell when we start localization and it starts with design, and then you don't really need to go back, you don't have those delays, something was not taken into consideration, and then it's such a painful process. You need to work on the design, you need to return to some issues. So with LSPs you can really sell some small companies like Moravia, well, those which were not really identified or detected by Moravia. Yes, we had this Revolut case in Lokalise. They started using Lokalise, and they were really small startup. Well, there was little interest in them. They didn't really have a big budget. I don't really know what the minimum budget is. 250? Well, it didn't really have it. Well, there was very little interest. No one wanted to work with them. So they acquired Lokalise, and there was this development and progress and investment, and everyone is interested in working with them now, but everything revolves around Lokalise now. And when that very first company could have developed together, could have developed at the same pace as Revolut, there would be no chance, and it would really have a chance to work with such a great client. Well, probably not with such a great budget that Moravia has, Landbreed, or the rest of the guys. So the key idea is that probably one can look for those companies which are not large scale and then to start selling them. Well, I don't really know about the minimal costs or rates, well, still to be discussed. And then services. We have translation as such, yes, as it is with Spotify. You have translation, everything is ready-made, you have media. Well, at this place you need to add these words. Just translate it. Or maybe you can offer something which is more interesting, maybe this one, because there was someone who did it in Spotify. If you learn how to do that and have to, and I mean not sell it to sales managers, but to marketologists. And here we talk about entering the market, we talk about promotion, then budgets and projects, they become more interesting, and and the scale is different. So it's easy to do that. You take a photograph or use a photo bank, you change the background. There are so many things one can tell. And with Spotify, they have, well, probably they don't have great resources, but one can sell it, and one can do that and make good money out of that. So it's not only about translation, and probably you can see that in some cases there was no translation, as in India or the Southern African Republic. There is a vast market for localization testing, and in many companies one cannot really understand how it actually works. What I notice is that in many companies, smaller companies, we have a vendor in Malaysia. They estimated something and they said, oh, okay, could be. That's how localization testing actually works. But there are some companies which consult how to organize this kind of testing, and it costs thousands of dollars. Just to consult someone. They do not do it themselves. They just provide consulting services. And here, it's not easy to join this club actually, because there are already some people who are quite popular and it's difficult to compete with them. But in some other areas, no one is interested in that. And when it's like empty space, you can really start entering it. You can look for developers, you can organize the workflow, you can really earn thousands of dollars, because these are small companies, but it's interesting because at the end of the day it will yield you great results annually. What I'm engaged in Lokalise, we try to have an automated process. Well, we're not very successful at this point. Well, trying hard, and you know how it actually works. Bottom approach, and here we have the replacement of some fragments. You don't really need to be a senior architect developer to perform this kind of an assignment. You just replace it, you substitute it, and very often these tasks are outsourced, and those corporations which work on that, they have solid experience and their household names. They don't really want to do that. And those developers very often don't want to do that, so it takes years. We had one project. There was a company which had 300 developers. They couldn't simply find the resource, to have those strings extracted, as no one would want to do that. So those consultants which work with internalization, they really want to work with outsourced. They consult first and then they execute it. It's nothing revolutionary here. You can look for people who can actually do that, who can do the substitution or replacement and sell it. And not just sell it as an internalization concept, but as part of the package, which no one wants to deal with actually. So that is an example from Lokalise Live. We have very many connectors with different systems and so on and so forth. It's, very interesting. But for clients, it's very important to interconnect these ideas to make sure that content flows from one area to another. And usually they don't really have access to developers. So maybe somewhere later they will have it. And you can also sell that. Usually it happens on the sales stage. How do you really manage this connection of data flows, some legal issues, the very production cycle from other systems to your TMS, and to make sure that this content flows back to that place where it works for the client. And it really works, and you can also make money out of that. And you can sell so many additional services, like translation and many others. Just you name it. And when you sell, what I was leading to is, when you want to sell here, the client is ready to make a change for you. You can mention it to the client. You need to do it this way. And probably the customer will be ready to work with you and to agree to your comments. So you sell not only to localization managers. They are aware of the prices. They really know how to haggle and, all of that. that. But you sell to marketologists, and you know about the budget, you know about the bonuses, and it is more interesting to sell. You have a new venue of opportunities. You have marketologists, designers, developers, and this is when the conversation starts to get really interesting. Well, a lot depends on the budget and the timelines. Clients, they will adjust. You will take different files, you will provide different infographics and schemes and frameworks, how it will evolve and happen, and jointly you will change this workflow. It's not that you give 40 pages of references and this is one page of translation. Make sure that you follow the instruction. Here, there is a chance to have a very comfortable process for the client, and on top of that, you'll be paid for that. And believe me, this is a whole different discussion. Then we have a localized partner, and many believe that when you have some partnership with localized market, some other technical vendors, it implies, well, take a look at these companies. These are well-known names, but it's not only because they have such partners. This is because they sell. And when you make a partner, never expect that you will have a bigger scale or volume of orders. So those sales that you worked on can really help in cooperation with such partners. If you have a client with whom you want to have these workflows elaborated, what is it called? Process, yeah, we call them processes, then Lokalise could be of help. But if you found the client and you have a technical issue, usually there will be a solution. Of course, you can expect that someone will help you out. Well, Gango is an exception, of course. There will be some options here. Well, you know where to find us, partners. Lokalise.com, that's an email address. We work with great companies, and if you are capable of finding some startups, some smaller companies, those which are not really known for LSPs, they have a great potential, great teams, then in Lokalise we help with sales. If you launch this dialogue, if you have some minor issues to conclude a deal and Lokalise is a TMS, then we can really help you.
So please produce new services, not only translation. Thanks a lot. And before you start producing new services, it's time for you to ask questions. We have a couple minutes left. Do you have any questions, please? Yes, I knew it. There would be questions. You're welcome. Were you present at my presentation? Did you hear that? Do you mean differentiation? No, about the startups. Not yet. You see, the idea to sell to marketologists is not the first time emerging, and those who were promoting it, that was the SmartLink. Lokalise is just trying to interfere the market, but SmartLink is experienced in that. At a different stage, it works, but for the Ukrainian company to have the Volvo marketologist, it's not that easy. And that's the point. Volvo is not the startup. That's the point. It was startup before I was born. There are some newly appearing startups, newly emerging. Nobody is replying to the emails. Those are the companies you can initiate your work with, you can start working with and try it. It's not that simple. There are some translation companies, and they not only Translate Perfect succeeded in work with startups. The notion of the volume. Transmedia works with e-commerce. They have good technologies, good team. I know about the Gango work. When somebody places the order, 12 cents a word, they have a large screen in Tokyo on the wall and it appears on the monitor as soon as there is some order placed. When I entered their office, I saw it was bleeping up. They are short of money. When they were just establishing their company, they wanted to change the world and wanted to create the self-service for everybody to be able to sell their services automatically. The owner was investing about $12 million. In fact, he failed to succeed and he sold his company. Probably something is being changed now because the old school hardcore companies who are interested in the quality, like Millennium, Winspousing, they are more interested in automatization and a low-touch approach. It's important to figure out whether it's possible to make twice as much with the help of localization as previously. Everybody knows the answer. It's not possible. Not exactly. I'm sure there are some options when there were markets with bigger financial allocations with less. That depends on the feedback, and that would enable you to work. I want to salute you for your optimistic picture of the world. Unless you make the errors, in this case, you will have always the 6 cents award rate. The situation is currently changing. It's gradually and constantly changing. The way the startups work now, it's not the way they used to work in 2014. Perfect. Any other questions, please, or contradictions, maybe some discussion points? Everybody's hungry. We have a lunch time. Look at this hungry eyes. So thanks a lot. Our audience.